Balak. Maybe we have time, we'll make it from last week, Parshas Kukah, some interesting things. Parshas Balak. So, when we learn Parshas Korach, remember I told you the Chidah and the Ben Ish Chai would not call Parshas Korach, Korach. They called it Ben Levi, Parshas Kahas. Why? Because they felt Korach was a Rasha, and we don't call a Parsha after a Rasha. So it raises the question, we have certain Parshios named after people. Noach, but Noach was a tzaddik. Chaye Sarah, she was righteous. Yisrael, also a good person. Korach we spoke about. Pinchas coming up this week is also a good person. Why is the Parsha called Balak? Balak was not a good guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if Bilam, Balak, why call the Parsha Balak? So they bring down a Gemara, and the Gemara says that Balak brought 42 korbanot, 42 sacrifices to Hashem. And because he did that, he had the zchut that Rus came from him. And we know Rus was the great-grandmother of David HaMelech, Shlomo, and Mashiach. So they say that Parshas Balak, he had the zchus of calling the Parsha after him, because all those korbanos that he brought, he would be the great-grandfather of Mashiach, of Rus and David. So that's an interesting thing. That means even though we have a rule, mitoch shelo lishma, ba lishma. Sometimes even if you do things for all the wrong reasons, but it comes out good, you get a certain schus for it. And that's what Balak happened. Another thing that's interesting is in every parsha, in the Chumash, there's a letter Pei or a Samach, which means it's a break. When you write the parsha, there's a break, the line is left empty. In Parshas Balak, there are no breaks. Literally, the columns are solid. There's no open lines. And the reason they give is that any Novi has to stop and think, what is this Nevuah? What does it mean? In Parshas Balak, between Balak and Bilam, they never stopped to think about anything. They just did, one thing after the other. All the signs they ignored. Hashem sent them signs, with the oxen, with the donkey, going left, going right. Nothing made a difference. Everything that happened, they ignored all the signs. Rashi brings down the Gemara as well. Rashi says, how could the Shekhinah, go to a person like Bilam? That means to be a Navi. If someone said to you, that person has Ruach HaKodesh, that person's a Navi, you assume that he's a big tzaddik, that he keeps everything. How could someone like Bilam have such powers of being a Navi Hashem if he was such a lowlife, if he was such a horrible, horrible person? So the Gemara answers that Hashem didn't want the nations of the world to have an out. We would have been better people had we had a Navi like Moshe. The Jews had Moshe. We didn't have a Moshe. So Hashem says, you had a Moshe, you had a Bilam. Had you wanted to, he could have been better, you could have been better. They give an example. A person has a recipe. Let's say a mother has a great recipe, tastes delicious. She teaches it to her daughter. Her daughter follows the recipe, it comes out horrible. So they ask, what happened? So the mother says, well, let me see how you did it. And finds that the daughter used a pot that had been dirty from the night before, not washed. So she says, of course, you can't put in a fresh recipe in a dirty pot. You got to clean the pot. You got to start fresh. He says the same thing as a Navi. You can take Nevuah, you can give it to a Moshe Rabbeinu who worked on himself year after year to be ready for this. And then you can give the same to Bilam, and it just goes wasted because he didn't prepare himself to be the Navi that Hashem intended. So, Bilam had powers, but he abused those powers. He misused it, he didn't appreciate it, and that became a major, major problem. Now, there's very, very interesting. There's a Gemara, a very complicated Gemara. The Gemara is in Baba Basra. The Gemara in Baba Basra says, and I have it here from the Otzer Pelos HaTorah. The Gemara in Baba Basra says, Moshe Rabbeinu, Kosaf Sifro, he wrote his book. Now we assume his book means the Torah, but the Torah wasn't his book, it was Hashem's book. Uparshas Bilam, and he wrote Parshas Bilam. And then the Gemara says he also wrote Eov, the book of Eov. So we know the book of Eov is a story of a great tzaddik who, even though he was a tzaddik, he suffered. And Moshe wanted to prepare us that even good people suffer. So that was the book of Eov. Some people say Sifro, he wrote his book, means Sefer Devarim. And it's fascinating. When Moshe spoke, you couldn't understand him. He would stutter. It was very hard to understand him. Yet when he said the words of the Torah, it came out crystal clear. So people right away understood that whatever came out crystal clear was not Moshe speaking. It was Hashem speaking from Moshe. Parshas Bilam, Moshe himself wrote. Hashem told it to him in Nevuah, and he wrote it down. Some people say he wrote a whole book just on Bilam. Hundreds of pages that got lost that we don't know. And Sefer Devarim is Moshe's book, because his stutter left him, and Moshe actually spoke Sefer Devarim. So Sefer Devarim is very unusual. That's why we don't stop in the Tochacha and the Chukosai, but you can stop in the Tochacha in Sefer Devarim. That's what the Vilna Gaon says. The Vilna Gaon says the first 4 books of the Torah, Hashem spoke from Moshe. The last book, Moshe himself spoke. Towards the end of his life, his speech became clear and everybody could understand him. He says that's why very often when the Navi quotes something from Sefer Devarim, it refers to it as Torah's Moshe. It doesn't say the Torah of Hashem. In Malachim Beis, it says that we don't punish children, don't die for the sins of the parents, because it's written in Torah's Moshe, which is the Parshas Kitzetzei, Lo Yamusu Avos Abonim. The children don't die for the sins of parents, parents don't die for children. So it's fascinating that anything in Sefer Devarim is referred to as Torah's Moshe. If it's in the other books, it's from the Torah's Hashem. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, when Bilam spoke, what language did he speak? Aramaic. Bilam was from Aram Naharaim or from Midian. So Moshe translated it into Hebrew. So everything that we have in Parshas Bilam, Balak, that's all in Hebrew, is Moshe's words of what Bilam said in Aramaic that Hashem put in his mouth. Now, a few things. First of all, why was Balak so worried? In the beginning of Parshas Balak, he's worried, he's nervous. The Jewish people were not allowed to attack Moab. Moab were cousins. They were the children of Lot. They were not allowed to attack them. So why was he so worried? So they say that he saw what happened with Sichon. Sichon and Og conquered parts of Moab. Once they conquered it, it became fair play for the Jewish people. So Moab was afraid that over the years, other nations would conquer him, and then the Jews would come, and then he would lose that land forever. So he wasn't worried the Jews was going to attack him. He was worried about other nations, and then the Jews would take over. They bring down a very interesting question. When we go to shul in the morning, how do we begin davening? Ma tovu o lecho yacho. Whose words are those? Bilam's. Why do we start davening with Bilam's words? So it's an interesting question. The Pnei Yeshua has a fascinating answer. The Pnei Yeshua says that in the Haftarah of Parshas Balak, you know what it says? Ami, my people, Zechor no, remember, my Yoatz Balak Melech Moab, what Balak Melech Moab wanted to do, curse you, Uma'ana also Bilam, and what Bilam said to him, I can only do what Hashem wants. So the Navi says, remember what Balak and Bilam did. So it comes out that there's a mitzvah every day to wake up and remember certain things. One of the things we're supposed to remember is the story of Balak and Bilam. How do we remember it? We remember by saying, Ma tovu alecho Yaakov. So it's not because the words of Bilam are so special to us. It's because the Navi said, remember what happened. And what was so significant? That we need to realize that in life, there are many things that happen behind the scenes that we don't know about. You know, a person could be caught in the rain and comes to his destination and he's a little bit wet, and he doesn't realize how many accidents he avoided and he could have been subject to, but Hashem protected him. It means we just don't know. He says there's something called the Milchemes Hashem. And last week we talked about Hashem. There's a sefer called Milchemes Hashem. All the battles Hashem fought for the Jewish people that we don't know anything about. There's a whole book like that. That means the book was lost. There's a whole book of wars and miracles. For example, when they were fleeing from Sichon, they were hiding in the mountains, and the two mountains came together and crushed them. The Jews didn't even know about it. They only found out about it afterwards. There were some people who had leprosy, they stayed behind, and they saw what happened, they saw the blood, and they realized what happened. Balak and Bilam. Balak and Bilam are on the mountaintop. Balak is saying that Bilam cursed the Jewish people and going on for days. Let's say they're up there for a week or 2 weeks. The Jewish people are down on the bottom, they don't even know what's happening. They didn't know the enemy was on top of them, they didn't know the enemy was trying to curse them, they didn't know there were plans against them. So every day we go through the actions of remembering what Balak and Bilam did in a way that we should try to think all the things Hashem has done for us that we don't know about. There's plenty of things that we do know about. And we always know when Hashem doesn't protect us. When God forbid someone passes away, when there's a car accident and tragedy strikes. There are certain times when we don't understand. There was, last week there was a Rabbi in Virginia Beach, and I guess there was a day camp, and one of the kids went into the water, and there was Virginia Beach, and they weren't allowed to go into the water because there was these rip tides. So the Rebbe ran in to pull the kid out, but he got sucked in. And he was gone. They couldn't find him for a few. They found him finally. They had
in the week, I think.
Alive?
Yeah, no.
No,
He was gone.
3 days.
Oh.
Right.
3 days.
They looked for 3 days, and then
Where did you find them? Where did they find him?
one of the Hatzolah boats found him floating. He was
our men only they looked one day. They said that's it, the gun.
after you couldn't. How could you survive in the ocean, floating around, and stay alive for 3 or 4 days? You just
can't help to find.
Yeah, a lot of people tried to help. So here, a kid went in, and he was able to get the kid out, but he wasn't able to save himself. You don't realize these rip tides, these underground currents in the ocean are very powerful. It's like a vacuum, it sucks you under, and you can't get out. You would need like 10 people, like a human chain, to pull a person out. So, you have these things all the time. Sometimes terrorists infiltrate a kibbutz or an area, and they catch the terrorist, and they kill the terrorist before he's able to kill anybody. And sometimes they don't catch him right away, and he kills a family or children. So you never know how often you are in danger, and how often Hashem has or has not saved you. That was a sefer called Milchemes Hashem. It was a list of all the times people were in danger, from Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, that they didn't even realize. And they were saved, or those that weren't saved. So the Parsha of Balak is a lesson in that. It's a lesson of how certain things happen and we don't even know about it. Today, the world is much smaller. There are a lot of things happening all over the world. Dangerous things that happen. Sometimes it comes to the surface, with Iran now and the tanker and the CIA spies, the accusations back and forth. Sometimes it comes to the surface, sometimes it doesn't. There are things behind the scenes that we simply don't know about. There's a Gemara, the Gemara says something very interesting. Bilam said to Hashem, I want to curse the Jews. Hashem said to him, no, he can't curse them, they're blessed. So then, the Medrash says that Bilam says, okay, I'll bless the Jews. I'll give them a bracha. Hashem said they don't need your bracha. I'll give them a bracha. I'll put, my words I'll put into your mouth. So they said, what was so terrible? That Bilam would give them a bracha. What's so terrible? So the Gemara says that sometimes the test of wealth is a much harder test than poverty. A person who's poor and struggling, it's a hard life, it's a hard test. But somebody who has a lot of money, sometimes that is even a greater test. I know it's hard to imagine because you think life would be so much simpler and easier, but the Gemara says that no, it's not that way. That sometimes it's worse when a person has money when they don't. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz says that people hear what they want to hear. Hashem said to Bilam a bunch of different times, don't go with them, the people are blessed, don't waste your time. And what did he hear? Don't go with them, those people. But better people I can go with. That means, Hashem was telling Bilam, the mission is cursed. Forget about the mission won't succeed. And the truth of the matter is, it won't make a difference. He was going to go to do whatever he could in order to do that. It happens to be, whatever it is that he was going to succeed. So people do what they want to do. People try to what they want to try. Now, some interesting things. First of all, this from the Shevet HaMusar. We have a mitzvah that if a person has a firstborn donkey, he has to do what's called Pidyon Petach Hamor. You have to redeem the donkey. Why were donkeys so blessed that if you have one, you have to go to the Kohen and redeem it? So one answer is that when the Jews left Egypt, they had donkeys with them who helped schlep all their gold and their pots and their pans and everything else. So the donkeys had a special schus that they helped the Jewish people leave Mitzrayim. The other reason is, it's brought down over here, that it's in the schus of Bilam, because Bilam's donkey opened his mouth to him and tried to teach Bilam right from wrong. And when he did that, Bilam kept hitting the donkey, and eventually the donkey died. The Rashi says the donkey died. So in order to show how this donkey was special, it was created from the 6 days of creation, for this moment, it lived its life for this moment, therefore, it says that he had a special schut, and therefore we have a mitzvah of Pidyon Petach Hamor. So, it's interesting. The dogs that didn't bark in Egypt also got special rewards. They got food, nevela, but this was a special treat that they had. There's a Medrash Rabbah, very difficult Medrash Rabbah. Let me see if I can read you the full Medrash. I'm going to read it to you. The Medrash says that Balak bought 42 korbanot. So the Medrash says as follows, that because he bought 42 sacrifices, there was a gzeira in Shemayim that 42 Jewish people had to die. One for every korban that he brought. It's unusual, 42 Jews. V'hamanik hanemon bikesh rachamim, but every Jewish leader daven to Hashem, don't kill the 42 people in my lifetime. So Moshe davened that 42 people shouldn't die because of Balak. And they didn't. He then handed the task to Pinchas. Pinchas took over. And Pinchas davened every day, don't let 42 people die because of Balak. When Pinchas died, he handed it over to Eli HaKohen. Eli HaKohen to Shmuel. Shmuel to David. David handed it over to Shlomo, etc., down to Eliyahu HaNavi, generation after generation. Eliyahu's student was Elisha. Now, what happened with Elisha was that one time Elisha was going to Yericho, and they told him that the water is very bad. The water is poisonous. So what did it do? Elisha went, and he took a bowl of water with salt. And normally salt makes water not drinkable. But here he poured the water and the salt into the stream, and a nace happened, and the water that was bitter and poisonous became perfect to drink. It's called the Mayon, the stream of Elisha. It's near Yericho. I've seen it. I've gone on tours. I've led people in the olden days. Before now, we really don't go to Yericho that much. We do, but not that area. And you could see that stream. They say that's the stream of Elisha that he gave a bracha. Now, there were a group of people there who had who made a living by bringing water to Yericho. So they went and they started to curse Elisha. You ruined our business. Our job was to bring water from up north to Jericho, and we sold the water. And now you go ahead and you fix the poisonous stream? You ran us out of business, you know? And they started to make fun of him. They called him Baldy, because he had no hair. They started to make fun of him. How many were there in that group? There were 42. So Elisha said, maybe it's time for Balak's revenge. And he said he stopped davening for the 42, and bears came out of the forest and consumed the 42 and killed all 42 people. Miyad bikesh rachamim means kaimu behem, that the 42 bears came out of the forest and killed the 42 people. So we have over here that this schus that Balak had, these 42, for hundreds of years they were protected until the story of Elisha. And then what happened was, when Elisha came, all 42 were lost. So they bring that down. It says over here in the Medrash Tanhuma, something very, very interesting, that certain people were born that they didn't need a bris milah. They were born with a bris milah. Noah, for example, was one of them. Yaakov was one of them. And it says, some people say 7 were born that way, other people say 10 were born that way. There's another group that says 13 were born that way. And in the list of the numbers given, they include Bilam. Bilam was born, even though he wasn't Jewish, he was born already from birth, from the womb, he was born like a Jew, with a bris milah. So he had something very, very special that he didn't need to worry about it. Bilam said to Balak, you're going to win. You know why? Look at the names of the leaders of the Jewish people. Amram begins with an ayin, Moshe, Mem, Levi, and Kahos. They're all the Levites. It spells Amalek. The first letters of Amram, Moshe, Levi, and Kahos spells Amalek. And that's what he says, Reish is Goyim Amalek. The beginning of this people spells Amalek. But Bilam said to him, that's not going to work, because if you look at the last letters of this name, it spells the word Misa, death. Meaning, whoever attacks these people will die. And that's what he says, Va'achriso. But if you look at the end of their names, Ade Oved. Whoever tries to destroy them will be destroyed himself. So Balak was so excited, he was looking for these signs. Like he was a sorcerer, maybe not as good as Bilam was, but he played around with all this sorcery. And he was trying to find, people look for signs. They ask Hashem for a sign. Give me a sign. I remember once I was at the Kaisel, and I said to Hashem, give me a sign. I figured everyone was asking for signs. I said, give me a sign. And there was a bar mitzvah. And they asked some guy to sing a song. And he sang the song, Chaben Yakar the Ephraim. Will Ephraim remember me, recognize me? I just said, give me a sign. And all of a sudden he's singing a song, will Ephraim see me?
Your name?
It was spooky. It was really, I never asked for a sign again. I said, enough signs.
Can you repeat he said that I understand that.
The first letters spell Amalek.
Yeah.
But if you look at the last letters of Amram, Moshe, Levi, and Kahos, it spells
not the first
death. So it says that whoever starts up with these people will end up dead. So, it was the same thing with Haman. Haman was so excited. Oh boy, the month of Adar. That's a bad month for the Jews. Moshe Rabbeinu died. He didn't know that it was also Moshe Rabbeinu was born in Adar.
The same day, the same.
He didn't know that. When Moshe Feinstein was born on Tiny Esther, he died on Tiny Esther. So Goyim might think, oh look, it's such a bad time. It's not such a bad time, because we look at things very, very different. Okay, so these are the things that happen. Just what it is. It talks about it very, very much. He brings down over here, he says that a person has senses. We have eyes, ears, touch. He says most of us no longer value our senses because we're so exposed with the media, between all the things, the movie, the violence, and everything else, that we've lost all sensitivity to our senses. So often things that happen, we don't even realize what is happening. We just lost those sensitivities. He says over here, the famous Rashi, that Bilam was riding a donkey. Why are you riding a donkey? Why aren't you riding a horse? A much more honored vehicle. So the answer is, though, that donkey was created from the 7 days of creation. It was eventually the donkey that Mashiach is going to ride. So it was a very, very important talking.
But didn't you say it died?
It died. It was taken away, but that doesn't mean it can't come back. Doesn't mean it can't come back. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Lazar, min haTorah min Admin Ksuvim. There's lessons from Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. In a way that a person wants to go, he ends up going. He says, sometimes a person wants to do something so badly, even though it's not good for him, even though it's wrong, it still doesn't stop him from doing what he's doing. It's the Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. The Vilna Gaon writes that the word Malach Hashem, that Hashem sent a Malach 10 times. 10 times Hashem tried to convince Bilam, don't go. With the donkey opening up its mouth and talking, and 10 times he kept saying to him, don't go, don't go, don't go. And each and every time he went anyway. He went anyway. Now, it's very interesting. There's an opinion in the Gemara that Bilam had a different name, that Bilam was Lavan. Not a Gilgul of Lavan. Some people say he actually was Lavan. And this fence that the donkey smashed his foot against was the fence that Yaakov had built when Lavan ran after him. And they had a deal. You cannot cross this fence to do me harm. The only exception was if there was profit, if it was a business deal. So Bilam waited until Balak offered him a lot of money, because that gave him permission. But every time the donkey hit his foot against the fence, it was to remind him, what are you doing? You're crossing the line. What's interesting is that in all the brachos that Bilam gives to the Jewish people, you know whose name he mentions over 10 times? Yaakov. In every other pasuk, he says Yaakov, 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 as if he's obsessed with Yaakov. He doesn't refer to the Bnei Yisrael that much, or Moshe. It's always Yaakov, 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 every pasuk. And he was obsessed. Because if this was Lavan, he was obsessed. And then it said, in the Haggadah, we say, Bikesh Lavan la'akos hakol. Lavan wanted to destroy the Jewish people. Everybody says, where? Some people say this is where it was. He wanted to curse them, that Balak should be able to attack and destroy them. So it's interesting how these things come to haunt you. Reb Gadal Yeshua once made an observation. He says, Korach, the Kuf, is the first letter. The Kuf stands for holiness, Kedusha. Korach's holiness was in the past. Chukas is now, today. The Parah Aduma is, if you're Tameh, it makes you Kadosh today. Balak is the last letter of the Kuf. His Kedusha is in the future, Rus. So many people have holiness. Sometimes their holiness is a thing of the past. Sometimes their Kedusha will be in the future. And then you have a few people who are holy today. Their Kedusha is today. Of course, the people that are holy today are the people you want to associate with and stay close to. You want their Kedusha. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more next week in Yirtzeh Hashem, when we talk about the relationship between the Jewish people and the non-Jewish world. What kind of relationship are we supposed to have? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. I'm going to give you some insights as to how to strike a balance. We have a Pinchas, and he risks his life for a particular situation, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Okay. Last week I wasn't here. I had a wedding. I did try to send a message, but I guess the message wasn't so easily received. Let's see if we can just talk a few things about last week in Parshas Chukas. First of all, Friday, Erev Parshas Chukas, is a fast day. Most people don't know about it. It's a fast day for tzaddikim. Tzaddikim fast that day. Why? Because in France, on that day, they burnt 24 wagons of Jewish books. A few hundred years ago, in France, on Erev Parshas Chukas, they burnt 24 wagons of books. It's brought down, why did this happen, this terrible thing happen? They say that 4 weeks earlier, the rabbi of that city publicly burnt a copy of the Rambam's book, the Moreh Nevuchim. He was anti the Rambam, and the Rambam had written the book Moreh Nevuchim, the Guide to the Perplexed, and he burnt it publicly to show you shouldn't read his books. And as a consequence, 4 weeks later, the entire libraries of the entire city, 24 wagons, were schlepped out and burnt by the French people. So it tells you how powerful the Rambam was.
What kind of book?
The Rambam's book, Moreh Nevuchim, it was a book against Aristotle. The Rambam wrote a book of philosophy to counter the opinions of Aristotle. The Moreh Nevuchim is a very deep book. It's been translated into English. It's a very fascinating book of the Rambam, one of the many books that the Rambam wrote. It's interesting, when Moshe sent a message to Edom, Moshe says, I want you to know the Egyptians tortured us very badly. And Rashi says that Moshe said to Edom, when we suffer, the fathers, the avos, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, suffer as well. So they all ask, what did Edom care about that? So they bring down very interesting. Edom is from Esav. How come Edom was successful? Because there was one mitzvah Esav did better than anybody else. What was that?
Father, took care of father.
Took care of his father, kibbud av. So Moshe said, I just want you to know, if we are in pain, the fathers feel the pain. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. So if you cause us any pain, you know who's going to suffer? Yitzchak. And your whole success is based on your respect to your father. So if you cause us pain, you'll lose your respect, you'll lose all your connections. So Edom didn't care. Edom says, we're not letting you go anywhere. We're not going to let you go through our land. But Edom didn't attack. They came out with a big army, but they were very careful. They never pushed the Jews, they never attacked the Jews, they never did anything. So he was very nervous, Edom, to have anything to do with the Jewish people, because he did not want to jeopardize the connection he had to his father. It says that they gathered on Moshe and Aaron. Why they gathered? The Meforshim say to be Menachem Ovo, because Miriam had died. But then when they lost the water, and they were upset and scared and nervous, so who did they complain to? Only one person, to Moshe. Why did they complain to Aaron? They say because everybody loved Aaron. Aaron had this unbelievable personality where people loved him. They say when Aaron died, there were over 80,000 kids born in the desert, all named Aaron. Right. He was the most popular name. Now, it's interesting that if you look in the Gemara, you don't have an Aaron. You have Rav Tarfon, Rabban Gamliel. You have people like Rav Shimon, Rabbi Yitzchak. You don't have Avraham. You don't have any Tanoim or Amoraim named Avraham. You don't have Moshe. Until the Rambam came, nobody named their kids Moshe. They were afraid. Moshe was such a holy name and such a powerful name, they were afraid to name their children Moshe. That's why it says on the Rambam, from Moshe until Moshe, there was never a Moshe. That's what's written on the grave of the Rambam. No Aharons. You look through the Gemara, there's 2,700 pages of Gemara. There are Amoraim, there's Rabbi Abba, there's Rabbi Levi.
Who named Maimonides Moshe?
His father, for whatever the reason.
How was he able to do that?
I don't know. He broke ranks and he did. It was unusual. There were no Moshes. After that, there were many Moshes. Rav Moshe Israelish, the Ramah, believe it or not, had a brother named Aaron and a sister named Miriam. unusual. And they're all buried together in the cemetery. You see the family Israelis, you see Moshe, Aaron, Miriam. Until then, these names were not used. In the Gemara, you have Yaakovs, plenty of Yaakovs. Plenty Yitzchaks, no Avrahams.
Ishmael.
Right? You have a Yishmael, for sure. You have Rabbi Yishmael, I told you have Rabbi Tarfon, you have Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. You have a Yehoshua, not a Moshe. You don't have a Reuven. Sure thing. You have Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. You have a Hillel, you have a Shammai, you have a Abaye, you have Rava. You have a lot of names. But not a Moshe, not a Avram. You don't have a Gad or Dan or a Yisachar or Zvulun. A lot of names you don't have. Today we have all these names.
Why no, no.
They were hesitant with certain names. Certain names they didn't feel had a good mazel to them, or they were afraid to use those names. It's just so interesting that for all those years, hundreds of years, thousands of years, you had a David and Shlomo, you had all these names. Then you have names that we just never use anymore, but they were just, it didn't exist. You know, these names seem to be gone. And, and yet we have Adam. It was very interesting. Moshe said, can I bring water from the rock? So the word Sela means rock. So if you spell out the word Sela, you have the word Samach, right? And then you have the word Lamed and the word Ayin. If you take the middle words, it spells Mayim, water. That means in the word Sela is water. Moshe says, can I bring out water from the rock? The answer is, you see, you take the word rock, a Sela, you spell it out, Samach, Lamed, Ayin. The middle letter spelled Mem, Yud, Mem is Mayim.
How many? Oh,
You have to just reverse it. So you have Mayim, water comes from the rock. Not only does it come from it, but it's in there. Okay? How many Porah Adumas did they have? From beginning of time till the end of time? 9. Moshe made the first one, it lasted 1,000 years. That means the little bit of ash that they used by Moshe was enough for 1,000 years. After that, Ezra HaSofer made like 5 of them. They were constantly becoming Tomei, they constantly needed to use it up. And then Shimon HaTzadik made one, Yochanan Kohen Gadol made one. There were different people who made different Porah Adumas. It says, very interesting, there was a person named Elhoane ben Hakuf. Now, a kuf is a monkey, the son of the monkey. Very strange name. So the Ben Ish Chai says, no, you're making a mistake. He had a person once come to him and says, listen, I have 5 children. You know what I want to name them? What? Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. That's what he says. So he said to them, no, those are not names. Those are letters of the alphabet. He says, but there's this guy, the son of the Kaf, the letter Chaf. That's Kuf, spells monkey. It was the letter Kaf. They used to name kids after the alphabet. So the Ben Ish Chai put a stop to it. He says that, we don't name kids after the Aleph Beis. So, he brought an end to naming kids after the Aleph Beis. But other than that, it was very, very interesting. It says that when Moshe died, people cried. When Aaron died, everybody cried. He uses the word everybody. When Miriam died, it doesn't mention that anybody died, as if they didn't mourn her with enough respect. And because of that, the water disappeared. So they bring down a very interesting message. They ask the question, but why did people panic so quickly? Surely they had water in their pots and their pans. People kept barrels of water when they used to travel. So it's a halacha. The halacha says when someone dies, in your community, you're supposed to empty out all your pitchers of water. Why? Because we're afraid that the Satan, after he killed the person, took the sword and washed it off in your water. So the water has a bad aura, a bad mazel. So
if it's open, no?
What?
If it's open.
If it's open. So they says, but that doesn't make sense because Miriam died b'nishika. She did not die with a malach hamavis. So another reason why we empty out the water is to announce that someone died. That means in the olden days, how do they announce funerals? Everybody would pour out their water, and one neighbor would see another neighbor pouring out their water. Why are you pouring out their water? Oh, someone must have died. They didn't have emails today. They didn't have a call system. We informed people. They didn't have Miss Asking where you put your name in the newspaper. Okay?
Rabbi,
So-
even the person died in the hospital, but not home.
Right, no, only if they, in the immediate rooms. If they die in the hospital, the two rooms on either side, that's the only ones you spill out the water. Now it says, certain people, only Hashem took their neshamas. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Miriam. They were the only ones. They never died through the Malach HaMavos. So it was done, so they say that one of the reasons we know this, that you have to throw out the water, is because nobody had water. When Miriam died, everybody threw out their water. The truth is they didn't have to throw out their water, but they did it anyway, for that reason. There's a pasuk the Ramban writes over here, that if Hashem takes the neshama personally, that body does not make you tummy. So in theory, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov do not make you tummy. A Kohen could go into the Maras HaMachpelah. Of course, you have Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah buried there, not Rachel, Sarah, Rivka, and Leah. So, it's what it is. Now, he asks over here, why did people really not eulogize, Miriam the way it should? It says they just didn't give her the respect that they should have. And it looks like, they were so panicked because of the water problems that they forgot about Miriam. And we find that this is a problem. Now, where was Miriam buried?
In the desert.
Any idea? We would say in the desert. Listen to this. And this is interesting. I'll tell you why. In the Seder Hadoros, it says that they didn't bury, it doesn't say they buried Miriam in the desert. They didn't bury her in the desert. They took her body to Eretz Yisrael. And there is a place near Tiberia, which is called the burial place of the mothers. I've been there. And they have tombstones up where they say, the Arizal says, and you know who's buried there? The first one is Yocheved, Moshe's mother. Next to Yocheved is Tzipporah. Next to Tzipporah is Elisheva, Aharon's wife. And the fourth one is Miriam. It's near Tiberia.
The same place?
The same place. They have a section, an area like a cemetery, where they have tombstones up from the Arizal days, and they say that this is the burial place of the righteous women, and you can go there, and it's Yocheved, and it's Tzipporah, Elisheva, Aharon's wife, and Miriam.
And
So
how far from Rabbi Meir Belana?
It's not far from there. It's outside of Tiberia. It's near, in Tiberia you have Rabbi Meir Balanes. Next to Rabbi Meir Balanes you have the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and Rabbi Akiva. They say Rabbi Akiva was buried in Tiberia because his 24,000 students were buried there as well. There's a mountain. He's buried on a mountain. That mountain has the burial place of the 24,000 students. So it says here that they buried the Rebbe next to his students. So it says that he died in Caesarea, but he was buried in Tiberia. Yes.
So they took the tomb, the body of Moshe Rabbeinu's mother.
Moshe Rabbeinu's mother Yocheved did not die in the desert, and they took Elisheva and Miriam and Tzipporah.
And they buried them in Israel.
And they buried them in Israel. How old was Rabbi Akiva when he died? It brings down that he was 120 years old, the same age as Hillel HaZaken, the same age as Moshe Rabbeinu, the same age as Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So these are some of the medrashim that they bring down where these people are buried. When people go to Eretz Yisrael very often, they don't make it to these areas. If you make it up to Tveria, you see the graves of the Rambam and some of the Tanoim and the Amoroim, some great people.
I was in the Balance.
Right, and if you go further, you go to Tzfas, you can go to the grave of the Al Shech HaKodesh, the Arizal,
Yes.
Moshe Cordero, the Rabbi Yosef Cairo.
Yeah.
You know, there you can see the Baal Shulchan Aruch. You can go to the grave of the Baal Shulchan Aruch. You know, you don't have those things here in this country, where you can do those things. He brings down over here that the famous snake, that when you were bit, that it was cured you, cured everybody. So they kept it from year after year. Shlomo put it on his, where his throne, he put the snake there, so people would come, they would be cured. Eventually, they started to make it into a avodah zarah, called it Nechushtan. And Chizkiyahu HaMelech came, and he destroyed it. And Hashem was very happy. Chizkiyahu HaMelech came and destroyed Nechushtan. But that was the snake of Moshe Rabbeinu. The same snake that bit you could cure you. Many times a vaccine has some of the disease in it. Sometimes the best cure is having a little bit of the disease inside with you.
So already on the throne, he said?
Shlomo HaMelech put the Nechushtan next to his throne.
A live one? Or
Well, it was just Moshe's snake that he made out of copper.
Oh.
So when people came to the king for a bracha, and he says, you know, we have my feet hurt or my head hurts, he would say, just go to the Nachash of Moshe, he'll cure
they don't
you.
know where it is now, right?
No, they broke it apart, they tore it apart. He destroyed it. Chizkiyahu HaMelech destroyed it because people started to worship it like an idol, made it special. And Chizkiyahu said, no way, you know, you can't make it into an avodah zarah. So it's gone.
Rabbi, I remember somebody said that there was a book of Hiskiyahu that used to heal everything.
Correct.
What happened to that?
He hid that away as well. There were certain things Chizkiyahu did that Chachamim were very happy with, and some things they weren't happy with. One of the things they were very happy with is he took that book and he hid it away. Because what happened was Hashem made people sick that they should think about their lives and make changes. But if every time they got sick, they just read the book and got better, the message was lost. So it'd be nice to have that book back again, I think. Talk about all these superbugs where they're resistant. Now everything is getting resistant to everything. You can't kill anything anymore because the old things don't work. Life finds a way to survive. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
To be continued next
Good
week.
night, thank you.